I call to order this public hearing of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board. It is 6 p.m. and the date is April 18th. I would start with a roll call vote from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Patty Beckman.
Libby Hartwells.
We have all board members here. We have a quorum. Okay, we are here for a public hearing on the, it wasn't on her thing. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, tonight at this public hearing, we are here on the proposed change in boundary attendance areas for the elementary schools in the Coronado learning community. Are there any cards for public comment?
Not yet, but we're going to do the presentation, right?
Remind me to change this.
Good evening, members of the Governing Board. I'd like to just tee this up by reminding everyone that part of the reason we're having this conversation is a prior decision of the Governing Board to make Tonalea a standalone middle school serving students in grades 6 through 8 and reopening Yavapai. And so members of the learning community have been working on the boundary changes as required by statute to address making sure that everyone is within a boundary for our elementary schools. And Dr. Hagegot and Shannon Crozier will walk us through the proposal.
And audience, thank you for having us back here. This is going to shortly conclude phase 1 of our restructure, which includes the reboundaries. But before I get into our presentation, again, I want to acknowledge the team that has worked tirelessly with us, including our principals, Amy Palatucci, Dr. Pernisky, Chris Hodo. We have Chuck Rentella, and part of our members are also Margaret Cerna, Sean Crozier, David Anderson, Dennis Rayler, Shannon Crozier, Dr. Sackos, and Christine Hendren. So I know that it's not a huge audience, but let's give them a nice round of applause for all the work. David Jacobson's, the applause are for you as well. So today we come here to remind you, as Dr. Menzel shared, that our purpose is to make sure that we have the attendance areas that are clear for Coronado Learning Community Elementary, Middle, and High School so that our families really know what school it is that belongs to their attendance area. I also want to share that with open enrollment, they're able to go to any of the Coronado Learning Community schools and or across our district. So our process really took work from our administrators. We also continue to get the demographer to share with us what were some of the numbers that we have of students living within our area. And we are going to have the opportunity to have the hearing tonight and on April 26th have a board vote on the outcome. So I'd like to turn this over to Ms. Shannon Crozier that was going to walk us through our numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. So we took a look at what are our current boundaries and what do they look like and what would make the most sense for our community, for our students, and you know where students land and getting them to a school that would be the closest to them. So we kind of took a look at that, which is the current boundaries, and then came up with a proposed boundary, which is the middle map. And our demographer pulled that together. That is the number of students right now, K through 5, that live in those areas, that could attend those schools. That's not exactly what is attending those schools, but that's what could be attending our schools based off of the current information for this year. The slide on the right just shows it more as what it would look like so you can get a clearer idea of where those boundaries really lie in the streets. Hohokam was changed just a small portion on the upper north side of it, giving them more. And so we looked at that as really, that had to do with the green belt is right there. And what does it make sense, you know, where is there a divider that makes a little bit more sense for that area. And it really came down to where's the Greenbelt and the Wash area go through, and what side of it to go to Hohokam and the other side to go to Pima. We moved Pima just a little bit. There was an upper tip that was around the Osborne and Scottsdale Road area that was previously in Tonalea. We pushed that over to Pima, so that made more sense to have those students attend at Pima. And then we looked at where were students at, what our map had been, and what made the most sense for Yavapai. So in looking at that and the numbers, that is where we drew the boundaries to see, in our opinion, based off the demographer, where that made the most sense for students to land within it. Keeping in mind, again, our schools are open enrolled, and one of the things we see when we go farther into this is how that really does play an impact with our schools and enrollment. So as we go into this, we did reach out to a demographer and just said, where are our students at? Where should they land based on enrollment? And based on the student data that we have, where are they actually attending? K through 5, to figure out what would be the best boundaries and where students would land. So we reached out to Rick Bremer from Applied Economics, who had done work with us in the past. And so he took a look at that information and what our boundaries were, and gave us the numbers we needed to really just nail down what do we think will happen, what are the projections based on what we know. Keeping in mind, again, open enrollment kind of leaves everything up in the air. So on this first slide, we looked at, now when Rick sent us this information and the demographic study that we sent to the governing board, looks at grades K through 5 with this year's current data. But we know that next year the 5th graders will be going on to the middle school. So when we looked at these numbers, we took what would it be for kindergarten through 4th grade, knowing that that would be our 1st through 5th grade. And then towards the end, we made some assumptions based on what we thought kindergarten would look at. So when we're looking at these first few slides, it's really looking at what is the data from this year, moving those students up to the next grade level. And what we found is Pima has 306, if you look at the K through 5, or K through 4th grade. 143 of them, or 47%, reside in the Pima neighborhood. So that is their Pima neighborhood right now based off of current boundaries. 120 of them, or 39%, live in Scottsdale boundaries, but should actually attend or could attend a different school. They're going to one Pima, but it's not their home school. And then 43, or 14%, live out of the district and are choosing Pima outside of our district. For Hohokam, we have 269. 146, or 54% of them, actually live in the Hohokam neighborhood and are attending Hohokam. So the majority are attending Hohokam that live there. 83, or 31%, live outside of the Hohokam attendance area but are choosing Hohokam. And then again, 40, or 15%, live out of the district. So we are capturing students who do live out of the district, which is great for those areas. Yavapai, we still had students that are at Yavapai coded to Yavapai, so that helped us out as we looked at this study to see, even though they're this year housed at Hohokam, who really belongs to Yavapai and who really belongs to Hohokam is their enrollment. So within that, 98 reside within the Yavapai attendance area of the 132. So of 132 that are technically Yavapai students, they are getting most of them, but it's a small number. 14, or 11%, reside outside of Yavapai but are within the SUSD boundaries and are choosing Yavapai. And 20, or 15%, are outside of the district. And then this other part plays into the Tonalea K-5 right now, because those students are going to end up going somewhere else, Hohokam, Yavapai, Pima, or hopefully within our district. So of that 256, 104, or 41%, are within the current boundaries for Tonalea and are choosing Tonalea. 107 reside outside of Tonalea, but are choosing that are in our SUSD district, but are choosing Tonalea instead of their home school. And then 45, or 18%, are out of the district. So again, Tonalea was also pulling from out of district. So then we started to look at where could those students go for next year. And you know, if you're enrolled at Tonalea, you're going to have to enroll at one of the other schools. What would that possibly look at? And again, this is not making any assumptions about kindergarten. It's just looking at what would, based off the enrollment that we have right now, what would it look like for grades K through 4, which would be 1st through 5th grade for next year. For Pima, we're expecting a possibility of 336 students. And where that really comes from is from the previous slide, you look at there's 143 students that are in that attendance area, that their homeschool is Pima, they're attending Pima. With the new boundaries, they could pick up another 13 students. And then if students that are currently at Tonalea K-8 and who were maybe going there because it was a K-8 school and their siblings are all there, if they went back to Pima, that could potentially be another 17. And then, like I said, the 143 students that are currently in there. So that altogether got us to the 336 between grades 1 through 5. Same thing for Hohokam. We looked at the exact same thing. The number of students that they could gain because of the new boundaries being 36. There's 5 students that are currently at Tonalea K-8 who may choose to go back to Hohokam since it's no longer a K-8 school. 34 students currently attending Hohokam but reside out of the district or within district boundaries. And then 269 that are currently attending. For Yavapai, again, there was 98 students that are currently attending Hohokam but reside in the Yavapai neighborhood. There's 55 that are currently attending Tonalea, but due to the new boundaries, could choose to go to Yavapai. There's also 55 are in the new boundaries and would be Yavapai. 57 are currently in the boundaries but are choosing Tonalea, but could potentially go back to Yavapai. And then 73 that are currently attending Tonalea from other schools within the district or outside of the district. For Tonalea, we know that they will just be for 6th through 8th next year. So we looked at what are the staffing projections based off of the enrollment that we did. So we're estimating about 470 total based on the staffing projections for Tonalea. We know that it'll serve grades 6 through 8 based off of prior board decisions. And then the elementary families that were previously at Tonalea K-8 are now able to attend either Yavapai, Pima, or Hohokam within these new boundaries. Or, of course, because we're a open enrollment school choice, they could choose another SUSD school to attend. And then students who are currently attending Hohokam from Yavapai can either choose to stay at Hohokam, and we will transport them for the first year, as well as Tonalea students who are residing in the new Pima boundaries may attend Yavapai if they want to follow with their friends or with the principal. And again, we would transport them for the next school year. So with that, we took the projections of what we got from the demographer, and then we looked at what are we projecting enrollment-wise for staffing for kindergarten, and that's based off of the 40th day. And so we took that projected for kindergartner and added that to what we think based off of the demographer to get what could be the student enrollment for next year. Again, keeping in mind, student choice makes a huge difference. But based off of where our students have been attending and the schools that they're choosing, that's where we feel things could land. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Shannon. Board Member Greenberg.
So, if I can understand the proposed boundary page a little bit better here, the figures within the proposed boundaries, 371, 351, 559, that is what the demographer says is the actual student body that exists right now in this area.
That's correct.
Even if not all those numbers actually go to SUSD schools.
That is the number. If students attended their homeschool and there was no other place for them to go but their homeschool, that's what we could potentially have at those areas. So what it kind of tells us is that there's students
13.
that we could be capturing that we're not.
So there are students we could be capturing, but the total body there is about 1,300 students.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following page is the actual student account, essentially based on the demographer's work of what we have at our 4 existing K-5
That's
schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then could you explain on the additional papers you provided the current and alternative 1 and alternative 2?
So when we went to the demographer, we had 2 different maps that we were looking at. Option 1 was the one that we really thought was the one that we wanted to go with. And so we asked him to give us numbers based off of both of those options, with where the map was. And it really kind of just changed within, let me go back a couple slides. Within the Pima boundaries, there was a little bit more of a sliver that came down from Pima off of that top corner. And I'm sorry, I don't know the street on that one, but that would have gone to Pima versus Yavapai. And when we looked at it, there was a couple of reasons why we felt that we needed to go with the option 1 that put a little bit more into Yavapai. Part of it being, we know that we're not capturing all of the students within the Yavapai area, and we're trying to bolster this learning community up in that area. The other part of it is when you look at the demographers' numbers, Pima is really a school that's picking up more than half of their students don't even reside within the Pima boundaries. They're coming from outside of the district or from other schools within the district. So adding a little bit more to Yavapai helps them with their numbers, and we didn't feel that it would really impact Pima because, again, over half of their students are coming from other areas within the district.
So when it comes to enrollment, obviously our goal is to increase enrollment, and we do that through various means. Hopefully our educational prowess, the opportunities we provide is a driving force there. What would be the administration's goal in terms of the size it would like to see? Because I see a limitation here. Obviously there's open enrollment, but if the natural student body size is only 1,300 in this area, what concerns or opportunities do you see with that?
So we'd like to see at least 400 per elementary. That's sort of the floor. More than that, it would be preferred, but 400's the floor. When you get below that, over time, that raises a question of sustainability. Some of the numbers that you've seen are either K4 because the 5th grade was lopped off, or it's a projection for kindergarten because we don't know how many are going to enroll. On that last slide that Shannon did before Q&A, you can see that Pima's almost at 400. Hohokam is projected to be just over 400. Yavapai has room for growth. We expect that in the transition year that there will be some churn, but I also expect that we're going to see a recapture. So if you look at the market share in Yavapai, there's that opportunity for Dr. Perniske and his team to really gain the trust of the community and make that viable again. So the goal would be to have at least 400 in the 3 schools with room for growth, both within the boundaries as well as a school of choice from neighboring districts or within our district.
So,
Can I add on to that too? One of the other things we've talked about is that this is really phase 1 of a multi-phase project for this learning community. So the first part being, let's establish, the new areas with it. But the second part being, we know we need to put in marketing. We know that these schools need a signature thing for them that draws students in. And so that's really been the discussion of the next phases is what is it that this particular learning community is the draw for our families, and what is it that will bring those families in, and then how do we market that to get those families back who may have left Yavapai when changes happened before? How do we get those students back? And so we were kind of taking this as a phase 1, we do this part of it, we establish the new boundaries. Phase 2 becoming marketing, and then what is their neighborhood niche for that school that's what parents want, that they want to see within that community. And so I think part of that too will be developing what is that and marketing that and bringing those families back in.
So it would seem to me then that the prioritization of having 400 or more students isn't a major driving factor in this, only because alternative 2 would have placed 2 schools at above 400 whereas alternative 1 does not do that. So we're not going to, just to be clear, we're not going to say use alternative 1 and then in a year from now place these schools on I don't even remember what we called that.
A
growth plan, right.
That is not at all the intent. In fact, we've talked about that it will take time as we change these boundaries, as we change from going to a K-8 back to a K-5 school, that, like we did with the schools before, this community needs time to develop and reform their identity, no longer having Tonalea K-8. What does that look like with them, and how do they move forward with marketing what is right for their community?
How many students can Tonalea as a 6-8 school?
How many can they?
Yeah, as a dedicated middle school?
Give me
would
just a
have to-
second. I have a school facility board number that they just approved. I just have to see if I can find the email.
I don't think we have Dennis in here. How much? I don't know. I would have to look it up.
About 700?
Yeah, it could do about 800, but because of program capacity, not just physical capacity, we're
Right.
looking at a safe 700 or so.
So there is room for all of those schools to grow.
How many students would be in, sorry, I apologize. How many students would be at our 6-8, our dedicated middle school?
470.
470. Okay. Well, as I've stated before, I'm very supportive of this plan. I think without a dedicated middle school, I don't know how we could expect the Yavapai, the Coronado learning community to thrive. I think that the goal of having 400 students per year, so that even if they're not all from the boundaried areas, that does put us, if the goal is to have about as many students as we would naturally have, but for school choice, I think that's good. I am concerned that, 1,300 students is a low number in general as a natural student body count for K-5. And I think there are also a lot of factors outside of our control. We still have the housing crisis issue, especially within Scottsdale, affordable housing and single-family housing, whether that's multifamily living spaces or homes is limited. So, it may behoove the district to also work with our City of Scottsdale partners, because obviously the issue over apartment buildings continues to rage on there, and so perhaps hearing from the district would be helpful too. But overall, it seems like the team put in a lot of work on this. I understand that we wanted to find some natural boundaries here, especially with the green belt in that area, which I think generally makes sense to use natural landmarks as a way to demarcate areas. And I do understand why we went with alternative 1 over alternative 2. So thank you very much. If I have any additional questions, I'll request to speak, but for now, I think that answers all of them.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Board Member Beckman?
So Shannon or Dr. Menzel, ADM, or Applied Economics, I'm sorry, Rick Brammer's group had done a migration sheet for the entire district a while back, like in the 2018 study, and then I think again in maybe 19 or 20. But it gave a fuller picture of not just the enrollment as it migrated from the different schools in the Coronado complex around. It gave a fuller picture of the student body migrating north and to the different schools, and so you would get an indication of how many kids that were supposed to be in this complex obviously attended Kiva or Cherokee, etc. I'm just curious, could we get something like that done again from them? Because I think it might benefit us after we do this to find out why or how many families are still choosing to not enroll in the Coronado complex, and maybe reach out to them and kind of mark it.
Yeah, for this study, we did ask him as to, and that's on one of the I think it's the second tab. It shows of the students that attend Hohokam, that should attend Hohokam, what schools they're going to. But we can broaden that to expand more. We just had him for this purpose, focus in on this learning community.
That one, you probably saw a sheet that had all of it, and I found it, I still reference the one from 2018.
Yeah.
Incredibly valuable. I don't know if but it's very helpful.
Yeah, we can absolutely reach out on that.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Any other questions from board members? Board Member Greenberg?
For the 6-8, if the program capacity is 700, and we are placing into the newly constituted Yavapai about 550 and we have another 700 students about at Pima and Hohokam. What is the hope in terms of filling Tonalea if we already have over 400 students? We wouldn't have capacity to take all of those students. Obviously, some of them go on to Mojave or other schools. So,
Well, we'd want to look at, so, I mean, they're going to slowly, we'd have to look at what is that rotation in. But I don't see an issue with these students all fitting in at Tonalea at the right
At the
time
right time.
for them.
So,
And part of it as well was also, we knew that there would be capacity for outside students as well to help grow that program.
for the school facility board number, they've got 1,075 students in the K-8 configuration. And so that shifts. Right now, it's 778 K-5, 379 6-8. So now when it's all dedicated 6-8, there are some
There's-
limitations because of program capacity. So it'll be
But-
less than 1,075, but it's a pretty
but
significant
as we
capacity.
rotate in. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much.
Board Member Beckman?
Just quickly, speaking of programming, are we going to, marketing is not the right word. Are we going to inform our community of the expected programming at Tonalea Middle School? What we'll have available for the students from a servicing the existing students aspect, from a growth aspect, competitive aspect, to attracting from outside, maybe Tempe, other areas? Are we starting to consider that as we move forward towards enrollment even for next year?
Yes, we have the opportunity, starting with our postcard that some already received as part of this hearing. But our goal in phase 2 is to start with the marketing part of it, sharing what it is that we currently offer as a Coronado Learning Community, which would include our middle school. And then what we're also having an opportunity to do as soon as we come back is get a committee together so that we are able to work with the facilitator on the Coronado Learning Community strategic plan, so that we can add certain programs that we know that can attract and retain some of our students. And so the marketing is a key element for us, because we know that we have an amazing Coronado Learning Community that has not been put out there in the way that will allow us to increase the enrollment the way we feel that it will. Anything to add, Ms. Hendren?
Only that we are going to be launching a series of digital marketing ads as well, targeting this particular neighborhood. So we'll geofence the specific schools that are ours, in addition to other areas where families frequent, say Capitol Park or the zoo, other areas, so that we can promote what it is we already offer and that we advertise back, and some of those things that are happening in the district. And those are launching within the next week or so. We just have to approve the artwork.
Okay. Can we include some principal bios and things in there too? I think it'd be service to the community well to know who is leading their schools. And that's it. Okay, thanks.
Great idea. Board Member Greenberg?
Were you asking what we're doing to advertise the programming as part of this process to get community buy-in, or do you mean generally? Because that raises another question for me.
Generally, Emma, yeah.
So I don't explain maybe briefly just on that point, our marketing strategy. Do we market to students to families or geographic areas that are not part of our district?
Grab a mic, Christine, please.
Yes, we can. So I think our marketing strategy is as much about retaining as it is recruiting. So we need to remind families what it is we offer, especially on that trajectory. They may be very familiar with what the elementary school has, but to also know what lies ahead at the middle and high school levels is very important in telling our story. But then there are also opportunities to be really specific, especially when it comes to digital marketing, to really target different areas where maybe we already draw or we know we have the potential to draw. So that might be around some other schools that are maybe competitors, or it might be around the Boys and Girls Club. Other places, the zoo, Papago Park. Over the holidays, we had some ads that were running, specifically geofencing the train park, McCormick, Stillman, because we knew that's where families were. And if you were waiting in line for the train, you might get hit by an ad on Facebook for one of our schools. So yes, we have the opportunity to reach further outside of our boundaries, but then additionally to ideally capture some of those who live in our boundaries and make them aware of what we believe to be the best choice.
Good. I just think I appreciate that explanation because I was a little concerned just on a limited question that we were focused only internally, and obviously there's a lot of benefits to where the Coronado Learning Community is located, as we know, from a commuting standpoint to obviously its location to the Greenbelt and housing. So I appreciate knowing that we're going internally and externally.
Can I just supplement that by saying that part of the messaging is the Coronado Promise, and Scottsdale draws in a lot of people who work in Scottsdale but don't live in Scottsdale. The number is maybe 150,000. We have a fair number of families that do bring their children to Scottsdale schools because it's convenient for them to bring their child close to where they work, but that can be a target market as well. So we've got a lot of opportunities to enhance our outreach to fill the schools.
Great. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of ideas for success here, not just changing boundaries, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and also thank you to everyone who's been involved in an enormous amount of work that's gone into this proposal. My question is actually, can you give us a summary of your timeline of these subsequent phases and when we expect to have this process wrapped up?
Yes, April 26th, we're very encouraged that we will complete the boundary part as the governing board votes for this to be completed. So that would be the end of phase 1. And phase 2 with the marketing, we're starting as early as March and will continue throughout, with August and September being the start of our CLC strategic plan with the facilitator and key community stakeholders, so that we can really define what it is that we are putting out there for our community to know of the K-12, pre-K-12 trajectory. And so we see at least the first semester of next year to be getting our vision and mission and getting ourselves aligned as a community, with second semester having some of that planning and preparation stages so that we can continue. Again, the marketing's not going to stop because we know that there's a lot that we want to share. So that's the short timeline. For us, we look at a 3 to 5 year plan to really be where we want to be as the Coronado Learning Community.
So just so make sure I understood correctly, so the phase 2 will take place the fall, first semester of the next school year?
That's for the program.
In terms of engagement, for the
Yes, we're
program
going to
assessments.
engage our stakeholders and really get into, very similar to what we had the opportunity to do for a district strategic plan, but specific to the Coronado Learning Community, making sure that we are connecting and complementing our district plan.
And the scope will include all of the schools in the learning complex, correct?
Yes. All of our administrators will have, we have a whole list of stakeholders that we're going to include so that we can develop and have a strong implementation of our plan.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the other question is about transportation. With the proposed attendance areas for alternative 1 that you've described this evening, what does that do to the current bus routes? Is that a net
That's a
balance
fabulous
or just-
question, and we have our expert here.
Okay.
And hello. This is why we needed to include them in the clap.
Good evening. It will definitely affect us. We're gonna have to redo all our routes, especially with the piece of the ones that are gonna need transportation for that 1 year. So we're gonna have to add that back in. But we'll get it done. But yeah, we're gonna have to redo all of our routes in the South Scottsdale. That's why my router's on me now. Like, when they gonna decide? I'm like 26, because she's ready to start getting those routes built for us. So yeah, because we're gonna have to restructure all of South Scottsdale.
Okay, so as soon as the board approval on the
We will
26th
start
presumably
making those
goes
routes.
through, then you'll get started on the transportation. So we'll have a better idea of what that looks like in terms of
And we-
cost.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we should have some changes because there's students that we are currently busing anyways to Tonalea right now.
Right.
So there might be some adds
may
and
balance out.
subtractions within there.
Yeah, we have we have quite a bit of overlapping now because of the convenience of the K-5s going to Tonalea with their older siblings. So we do have a lot of overlap now. So this is gonna kind of clean some of that up long-term, because we're still gonna have those other routes going into the schools, because they wanna stay for that 1 year. But after that, those will go away, and it'll kind of clean that up a little bit, because not so much overlap.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from board members? Shannon, I have a comment. I actually like hearing that we are making a commitment to not only telling our story, but also gaining feedback from parents and families in our community as to what draws them to Scottsdale schools. And if they're not participating in our Scottsdale school community right now, what would it take for them to choose Scottsdale schools? So I look forward to that give and take and ebb and flow in communication, because I think it's really important for us to not just assume why people choose differently, but to be very intentional with our progress and our development to improve. So thank you to all who played a role in this presentation tonight and this big data dive of information and sometimes presuming and, like looking ahead. It's important, and I really appreciated the comments made by my board colleagues tonight. They asked great questions and provided answers for me and hopefully the community as well. Dr. Menzel, do you have anything else to add?
Nothing else to add unless there are public comments, which we would be interested in hearing.
Right, do we have any requests for public comments at this time? Seeing none, I ask for a motion to adjourn this public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 to adjourn this special hearing at 6:37 PM on April 18th.